It is currently 29 degrees. Frank Pangallo, MLC. I tell you what, it was pretty warm when I dropped past, around about 40 degrees, I think it was.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, Andrew. It was pretty hot out there today, and but the work proceeded, and the earth movers went in, and the first of 3 sites was excavated today, and that was the one that was excavated in 2013 by police. And look, nothing much came up there, and no one expected really to find something there anyway. But we had to eliminate that one, and they dug a wider pit to have a look, and then filled it in.
What about the topsoil? What about the topsoil? Was that the site with the extra top level of?
No. Well, there was extra topsoil on that site, but the one where the extra topsoil was added, the extra 2 metres, is about 100 metres to the west, and that site will be explored on Monday, along with the important new site that has been only discovered in the last few weeks. And this new site, Andrew, could well be the site that the 2 Harkin brothers had dug the grave-sized hole 3 days after the Beaumonts disappeared. The 2018 hole, which is only nearby, it's about 50 metres away, may not be the site, and it appears also that after they did some title searches, that Mr. Phipps, the owner of Castalloy, didn't own that site at the time in 1966, so he only took possession of it in the early 1970s. So this is why the new site is actually of far more interest to the project team and to the investigators. This could well be the site that we could find something. And
I'm curious. I'm curious, Frank. This investigation has been going on for 59 years, and what prompted somebody to go and search the titles after all this time?
Oh, well, look, it was all about. The site is actually owned by the government. And it was just routine, research by the government to see who owned the titles or whatever, because they own it.
Yeah.
It didn't occur to people that Mr. Pitts may not have owned that small portion of land that they looked at in 2019, because it was all part of the one site. But then when you had a look at the title search, well, he didn't own it in 66. But there is that area to the west of it, which is the main area of interest now. And I can tell you that the government has done its own exploration of that site. They've actually done a number of digs themselves throughout the site.
Which government are we talking about?
Well, I'm talking about Renewal SA,
okay.
The government agency that's responsible for the site.
Yeah.
And look, they were cognizant of the fact that there's a lot of interest in the site regarding the Beaumonts. So when they cleared the site, they had a look at some areas around, particularly closer to Maringi Avenue, where there were 2 cottages there. And they called the police in, and there was some diggings that were done there by the police under the foundations. And Renewal SA themselves even did some digs behind those cottages where it was, and also towards the centre. But this one area that we're looking at on Monday hasn't been touched or searched, and they discovered that there was a gate there back in 1966 that no one knew about in later years, where those boys most likely went through. I've seen some aerial shots from 1969, and it clearly shows that there's a roadway that goes through there and an area of interest in there. So that's the one that we're going to concentrate on Monday and Tuesday. And look, hopefully we find something there.
Well, and we're not going to know whether you are going to find anything. We're hoping that there will be something to
some sort of closure. There needs to be some sort of closure on the theory that Harry Phipps was responsible for the disposal of the Beaumonts at that site.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, why he emerged as a strong, suspect, probably the best person of interest that I've known in the 59 years I've known about this case, is because there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that's emerged putting him in the spotlight. It started with a sighting by one of his own sons, who claimed that on the day the children disappeared, he saw the three kids getting into Harry Phipps's car at Glenelg, near where they were last seen, and that was his testimony. The thing is that those kids, when they were at Glenelg that day, were playing with this person who seemed to be very friendly and seemed to be known to them, and which is probably why he won their trust and was able to, take them away. He also gave them a £1 note to buy their lunch at the Wenzel's Bakery. A £1 note is a lot of money in those days. Harry Phipps was known to tip with £1 notes. The boys that dug the hole 3 days after the disappearance were both paid with £1 notes. And there was other circumstantial evidence that was linking him. But I can tell you tonight that perhaps the most astonishing link between the Beaumonts and Harry Phipps was information that came to me last week by a credible person, known to the Beaumonts, who told me that Harry Phipps's nieces was married to the cousin of Jim Beaumont for a short period of time. Now, I've never known that before. Nobody knew that before. But there was, again, this link between Phipps and the Beaumonts. Now, it's not to say that the niece may have known anything about it, but again, it's just that circumstantial evidence, that link between the Beaumonts and...
Well, there could have been that familiarity. There could have been that familiarity because the children already knew who Phipps,
exactly.
And they felt safe with him as well because he to all intents and purposes, I mean, this is just speculation, I know, but it sounds like he groomed them.
Well, yes, and, the thing is, Andrew, that the reason that we're in there looking at that site is to eliminate the possibility that when those two boys dug that hole 3 days after the children disappeared, on a hot Saturday afternoon with no one else there except Harry Phipps, what went in that hole? Now, we expect to find that hole on Monday or Tuesday, and, that could, perhaps close this chapter. And look, it'll be the last time we'll be able to get on that site.
Yeah.
So, it'll be closure at that point.
But
hopefully we do find something, Andrew, because you really want to see an end to this saga.
Well, there'll never be an end until we are certain as to who committed the crime.
Well, I'm sure that if we find the remains of the Beaumonts there, you can rest assured that the person responsible would have been the owner of Castalloy.
But who else may have been involved? What other collusion?
Yes, well, exactly. Well, exactly. I've had. Look, the thing is with this case, each time it hits the media, people come out of the woodwork with recollections or their own theories, and 99% of them, you can easily dismiss them and discount them what they say. But occasionally you get one bit of information that is totally different and new, and this is what I got last week, that link between Harry Phipps and the Beaumont
why has that
family
just been
themselves.
why has that just been discovered now after all this time? Why didn't the red flags come up earlier?
Well, look, I think the person that told me just wanted to get it off his chest. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And wanted me to know about it. And, I was able to confirm it. And when I confirmed it, it just sort of blew me away. I thought, wow, here's another link to Harry Phipps that you can't dismiss. So, look, it's made us even more determined to have a really good look at that site. And look, the dig is going to be done a lot different than what it was by the police in 2018. Professor Marchie Hennenberg from Adelaide University, who's an eminent forensic anthropologist, archaeologist, who's an expert in finding missing graves. He's found missing graves around the world, in Greece and Italy, ancient graves. So he's confident if something is there, he'll be able to identify them. So it's intriguing, and it's raised enormous interest around the country and even overseas. And this is the nature of the crime that's been committed, Andrew. And I consider this Australia's greatest crime, and also Australia's greatest tragedy, because it changed Australia in 1966, and we've still been talking about it, 59 years later. But so many people want to know, what happened.
It certainly changed us here in South Australia, but it wasn't the first of those sort of crimes to be committed. And about a year before, I think it was over in Sydney, two young children were abducted and their bodies were found a day or two later. And there were similarities as to, how they were abducted. I think it was from a beach in New South Wales. And so there were similarities to what happened to the Beaumont children as well, other than the fact that those bodies were found and the Beaumont children's haven't.
Well, but these were three little kids, right? They were three little kids innocently playing at Glenelg Beach, and they were snatched in broad daylight by somebody, and from there, it caused enormous grief for Mr. and Mrs. Beaumont, and the rest of Australia really felt for them. But when you look back, I've studied that case because I've covered it as a journalist from the 1970s, and I know a lot about what went on, and particularly in 1966, and the way that police bungled the initial investigation. The police did a terrible job when the children were reported missing. The most critical periods in trying to solve a crime or find out what happened is the first 24 to 48 hours. But it took police 48 hours or more to wake up to the fact that the children had been kidnapped, because up until then they just thought that the kids had run off. Yeah. And they didn't put all the resources in to go looking for them. You had Jim and Nancy Beaumont getting in their car and, travelling all around Glenelg and whatever, looking for their children, before police really started to get interested in it. And then when they did, they didn't have resources at Glenelg Police Station. Now, I recall talking to former Chief Superintendent Ken Thorson a few years before he died. He was a CIB detective at Norwood, and he was telling me how he was telling the police commissioner at the time that they needed to put more resources into Glenelg, even to send people from the Norwood Police Station to go there, because they were being overwhelmed. They only had one telephone in the Glenelg Police Station. Yeah. And also there were 300 people lined up outside to give witness statements, and only one police officer inside to take them. And people just walked away, they I haven't got the time to hang around in 40-degree heat. We're leaving. And to get their story to the police. So who knows what they missed at that time? Who knows? And that is another part, a tragic part to the story, is what happened and the way the police had handled it in those early days.
Frank, you mentioned just a moment ago that people have got a lot of theories in regards to what happened, where they may be, etc. I've got to call Andrew from Penong. He believes there's another side of interest, which is on Port Road. Andrew, what's the story with what this theory is you wish to discuss?
Well, hi, Andrew. Hi, Frank. Look, we're all gutted by this, and let's hope there is closure. It just hangs over us like this wreath of shame. There's an elderly gentleman in an aged care facility, lovely fellow. He worked for Harry Phipps. Harry took him under his wing, and the fellow was engaged to... Fiberglass was a new product, and he was sent around the world to come up with ideas, and he came back with ideas to make surfboards, to make catamaran, pontoons, you name it. And I believe Harry Phipps set his two sons up with Castalloy plastics. And I've got a feeling, and I think I've got a couple of those surfboards, and I've got a feeling that site was off Port Road. Now, Port Road's had multiple extensions and widenings, whatever. I can't even recall where the site is. But Frank, off air, maybe you might want to take my number. Maybe I can put you together.
Yes, yeah. Look, if you can give it to me.
Stories about Christmas parties where there was some tension between another fellow, anger, whatever else, which everyone just thought, what's all this about? And it just, maybe there is something somewhere that leads to, finding what happened, if the Phipps Harry was related, and whatever else. So I'm more than happy to talk to Frank off.
Please do. If you can leave your number, I'll definitely give you a call about that. And it's interesting, that connection with surfboards and whatever, because apparently Phipps was seen putting surfboard bags into his vehicle as well, and there could be a suggestion that if he did do away with the kids, that they were hidden inside these surfboard bags.
Well, there's as you know, there's a lot of podcasts about the Beaumont case and other cases similar to it, but there's one particular podcast where the son of Mr. Phipps is quoted as saying, it was on the day of the disappearance, he saw 3 children going to the house. There was a cellar there. He didn't see the children leave, but he saw his father taking out 3 bags that you're referring to now.
The surf bags, And look, if people, in fact, if they read the Sat Man, you'll just see why Phipps ticks so many boxes and where the house is. So close to where the children were playing, and also close to the bakery. Like it was, a minute's walk away, and that's where they were seen, and then they disappeared after buying their lunch with a £1 note.
Well, his house was in Augusta Street, I understand.
That's it. Yep. Yeah. Still there today.
Yeah.
When he died and the house was cleared out, that's when people sort of discovered his weird sexual fetish for satin. And I think the story started to emerge about his dark background and his strange habits. So, look, this has to be eliminated, which is why the search has gone down there. You just have to eliminate the prospect that they're there or not, right? And this is why people still have such a great interest in it. And, it really has that bond within the community to find the answers. And it couldn't be as clear as, having the earthworks there today, the earth movers, Flavio and Sons.
Yeah.
Now, I just happened to bump into Flavio's wife last November, just when we got consent from the government to be able to go in and conduct the dig. And his wife has been following the Beaumont case since she was a little girl and wanted to see some closure, particularly at the site at Castalloy. And she said to me, "Oh, Frank, are you going back in there? Just like you have been asking me for over a year."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, look, we've got permission to go in there, but, it's going to be a big undertaking. We're going to need earth movers prepared to come in and help." She said, "Well, we've got an earth moving business. We'll go in there and we'll do it at no charge." I can't tell you what a big undertaking this is for Flavio, his wife, and his kids. You saw there today. It is at significant cost. And these people have put their own money into it because they want this matter solved one way or another. And that gives you an idea of how people come together to do that.
Yeah.
Professor Hennenberg also giving his time. He's in semi-retirement, but he took an active interest today, sitting under the hot sun, watching the excavations that they were going. He's certainly looking forward to next week and that new site. That's the one he suspects those 2 boys dug in 1966, and there could be something to find in there. So
we'll have to wait and see.
It's fascinating. Look, Andrew, it's a story that has fascinated Australia for 59 years, and will continue to fascinate Australia until there is some sort of closure. And when we have, events like we have now, where there's a search, there's a lot of media interest, people will come forward with all new information, just like your caller just did just now. Now, I'll be keen to go and see this person. I got an interesting call during the week from a woman who was a young girl back in the mid-60s who told me that she was only a child. She was about 5 or 6 years old. She was led out of Hindmarsh Stadium by a man wearing a trench coat and a hat, and he took her outside, ostensibly because he wanted to go and buy something at a shop and he didn't know where it was, but he placed her on the bonnet of his car, and it was a big American car, where he raped her. When I asked her, do you know what type of car it is? Could you remember it? She said yes. And when I said, have a look at a Pontiac Parisienne, and she called me back and she said, Frank, that was it. That was the car. And she described his features, and they were very similar to Harry Phipps, and also probably the kits that were taken from the Adelaide Oval.
Yeah. Hey, Frank, I've got an email from Jill regarding Beaumont children. It says, can you ask Frank about Andrew McIntyre, who says he knows but is being kept quiet by SAPOL?
Look, I actually received an email myself. I'm not sure whether it's the same person that's emailed me today, but I'm going to make inquiries about that. I've had heaps of emails that have come in, and I've tried to get to all of them, and also a lot of calls as well. Anything that comes in that I think is of interest, I'll certainly follow up, and so will the researchers, because, I think everybody wants to see this tragedy, this saga, come to an end. And, look, I have to say I'm very grateful to the South Australian government, to Renewal SA, to Minister Nick Champion, South Australian Police. It sort of gave this private dig, the green light, because they could have easily have said no. No, we're not going to let you go in there. But they allowed us to go and have a really good look this time. It's a more detailed dig. It's deeper, it's wider, and it's going to be forensically examined. So, they're just going to comb across the surface. So, but, to have those agencies all come together and say, okay, go in, have a look, this could well be the last time, I'm really grateful for that. I hope we can close the chapter, the final chapter in the Beaumont saga next week. But, you always have to be hopeful, and you always have to try, Andrew, regardless, right?
100%. Frank?
Well, I didn't want to die wondering what was in there, and that I didn't try hard enough, because I know so much about that case, and I've followed it so much, and I'm intrigued by the connection with Harry Phipps, that I didn't try hard enough, and particularly in my position now as a member of the Parliament, to try and get some kind of final resolution to it all.
Frank, really appreciate it. And I've just got to say thank you on behalf of all South Australians in relation to what you're doing, and Flavio and Sons, what they're doing, and everybody else who's involved with the dig. Can you give us an update tomorrow night at 9 o'clock when I come on air?
Well, tomorrow night we're not digging. It's a day off.
Oh, you're having the day off, are you? All right.
There's a day off tomorrow.
Right.
But it resumes at 7 a.m. on Monday, which also happens to be War Animals Day, Andrew. Yeah. And so it's War Animals Day on February the 24th, and there's an event at the West Croydon Kilkenny AOSL. You're all welcome to come, and our friend Barry Heffernan will be a guest speaker there.
Good day. Say good day to Barry, will you please?
I'm sure he'll be listening to you tonight.
And we must catch up again. Good on you, Frank. When does the dig finish? What day does it finish?
Well, look, it depends what happens at that new site. So Tuesday could be Wednesday, maybe Thursday. We're there, we've got the site for the next week. So we'll see how it goes. But the new site will be paying the board. So, But before we go, I'm really angered, and I think Australians should be angered at the way Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong have reacted to those Chinese firing live shells off the coast of Australia near Sydney. To say that, we've lodged a diplomatic complaint is outrageous. They should be hauling in the Chinese ambassador, who's a bit of a loudmouth himself, and saying, what the hell's going on here? Who do you think you are? They're coming here to flex their muscles to show us how tough they are. And quite frankly, it's just simply unacceptable that our government would just sit back and allow this to happen. And it just goes to show you how much exposed Australia really is with its defences, that you can actually have, a number of Chinese warships that sail within 150 kilometres of Sydney, unobstructed, no questions asked. And now you have the government saying, a diplomatic complaint. I mean, how weak and pathetic are we? Stand up for your country and tell these guys, what are you doing? That's my rant for the night.
Well, thank you very much, Frank. But it's funny. It's funny you should bring it up because I was wanting to end the conversation with a bit of levity, and I was going to say once you've sorted out the situation, you've got the Beaumont children. Hopefully found, and that's some you use the word closure. I'm not sure if there's such a thing as closure when it comes to the emotions that people have over that particular incident. But I was going to suggest, all right, now we need you to sort out China, okay?
Well, look, I got to tell you, it's been a pretty incredible week this week, particularly with what happened in Whyalla on Wednesday, and to be part of that monumental move by the Premier. It was an extraordinary day, I have to say, and I guess I'm sort of privileged in a way to have been part of what happened, but I've got to pay the Premier a huge compliment. I mean, it was a masterstroke in political manoeuvring and also political leadership, and it just goes to show you, South Australia has a pretty able leader in Peter Malinauskas, whether you agree with his agenda or not.
Oh, 100%, 100%, yeah.
He was, Wednesday morning when we were all called in at 10:30, where he outlined his plan to put the steelworks into administration. He was as cool as a cucumber, right? He was sitting there, impeccably dressed, chomping on an apple, and the only thing that was missing was a cat on his lap as he outlined the execution of Sanjeev Gupta. And I think I've mentioned that. I just thought Michael Corleone couldn't have done a better job because everything fell into place. And within 2 hours, Gupta was out. And it was an acts of parliament that went through in record time. I was a bit disappointed because it beat my record of the ICAC Act, but it went through in record time. It went through assent. The governor was waiting to do it. They had lawyers on standby in Sydney to issue Gupta with the paperwork and give him no opportunity to be able to run to court and try and stop it. It was, it was an amazing, accomplishment and a well-executed plan that obviously had been in the works for some time. But the Premier, he did a fantastic job. But we lost the hydrogen plant, but I always thought that was a green elephant. I think I've always said that on your program anyway. It was
yes, you have. Yeah. Frank,
all right.
Enjoy your day off tomorrow. We'll deserve break tomorrow, and look forward to hearing more about what's going on with the dig during the week as well. You take care.
Well, absolutely. There will be daily updates, and I'm sure you'll hear them on 5AA.
I'll be listening with great interest, Frank. Okay.
Oh, listen, before we go, but something I can tell you tonight. You remember we were talking about security guards?
Yes, Battens.
And the security guard that was...
Vince Palumbo.
Vince Palumbo. Well, guess what? Yesterday he got a call from South Australian Police and they dropped the charges.
Yeah.
They dropped the charges.
Well, he was given the go-ahead. He was given written authority to be able to carry a baton.
Absolutely. And he showed that to the police. Yet they just forged ahead and reported him and were going to, in fact, charged him with carrying an offensive weapon. Even though he showed them the email that would have cleared him. But clearly it must have gone to prosecutions and they said, look, there's no reasonable prospect here of getting a conviction, particularly with that email. But I think the other thing, Andrew, what it would have shown is, if you consider what he was carrying as an offensive weapon, it was a wooden baton that is made out of balsa wood, right? Mm-hmm. It wouldn't hurt a fly. Well, basically, the only thing you'd kill it would be a fly.
It depends on who's using it. If Vince is using it, he probably could hurt a fly.
Yeah, but if you're carrying that, imagine anyone carrying a walking stick.
Oh.
Now, that's an offensive weapon. Well, you can consider that as an offensive weapon.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you stop? But anyway, look, common sense has prevailed, and Vince is quite relieved at hearing that the matter is going to be dropped, because, look, I've spoken to him several times since it all blew up, and he's been quite distraught because it threatened to end his livelihood.
Well, 100%,
And you wouldn't find a person who has more integrity and more respect. He is so respectful of the law in South Australian police. And to think that, all that was now being jeopardised because of this sham charge. But anyway, it's had a good ending.
And it's a good ending to our conversation. I've got to keep on moving because I'm behind with commercials again. Not for the first time when I speak with you, Frank.
Well, you're on for 5 hours. You can get rid of them. Thanks again for having me, Andrew. Good evening to your listeners.
Thank you, Frank. Really appreciate it. You look after yourself, okay? All the best.
See you.
Good luck. It's 25 minutes to 8. Frank Pangallo, MLC, talking about the Castalloy dig and the Beaumont children, as well as a couple of other topics as well. But, all right, it's open line talkback. The number to ring, 8223 0000. We've got a few outages happening around the place, 6 outages affecting 652 SA Power Networks customers, and their Blair out.